Yeah, it's mindset cafe, we all got that mindset. Gotta stay focused, never settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive thoughts.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy, Dev Gonzalez, and today we are back with another special guest. We have Paden Squires on. He is a CPA, CFP, and an entrepreneur who is passionate about helping business owners really simplify their finances and reduce their tax stresses while building wealth and peace of mind. And as we start to get towards the end of the year, honestly, this is when you should be starting to talk to someone like Paden, if not Paden, if you guys don't have anyone, because don't wait until the end of the year or the beginning of the year to try to figure out, and now you're playing catch up, right? You should be figuring those things out now. It's September. Believe me, December, January is going to come a lot faster than you think. But without further ado, Paden, thank you so much for taking the time out to hop on the Mindset Cafe.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
So, I like to always start off with, a little bit of your backstory. How did you get into, the financial planning, the accounting, like all that, what led you to that road?
Yeah, great question. It really goes back to my childhood. I grew up a single family home in a single mom situation. Why we didn't have, we weren't like completely destitute or anything, but we did have struggles, right? And it's certainly things I knew or recognized as a kid that, maybe we had a little bit less than others. And in times, I remember stories of when my mom actually got laid off from a job and my grandma being there and being anxious and everything about it. And as like a 10, 12-year-old kid, that was like a huge, burned into my mind of, the anxiety around that, right? And so that drove me, it drove me into the world of money and finance, right? I just knew I never wanted to experience that again, like as an adult. My motivation probably was nothing more than I didn't want to be poor, right? As non-noble as I guess that is, but like that was my fear, right? And that led me into studying money and accounting and all those things in college. I went through that, ended up getting a master's degree. I came out, in the middle of like the 08, 09 recession out of college. So like everybody in finance was getting fired from their jobs. So I ended up getting a job at a little local bank, worked at a couple of years in a few different, insurance company, a local bank, and then a large manufacturing company, but quickly found out like I'm not built to be an employee at all. Really anywhere. While I was a good employee, anybody would say I was a really good employee. Like I hated it. I hated sitting in the cubicle, doing whatever people told me to do, bored out of my mind kind of thing. So when my last real job I had, back in say 2012, I ended up sitting there studying for the CPA exam, and that was my escape plan. My escape plan was to study for the CPA exam. As soon as I passed, I quit my job and opened up my own firm. And, that happened in 2014 and grown into what it is today.
Oh, that's awesome. That's the hard thing is like a lot of people will get frustrated with, their current state, whether, it's being an employee or, something in their life. But a lot of people don't want to take that step or take that, that step off the ledge and into the unknown. And so for you to do that, is huge. What were some of the first like unknowns that you had to experience going from employee to business owner?
Yeah. So, the listeners know, it was scary, it was the best decision of my life, but I didn't know that at the time. Right. I didn't know how this would play out, but yeah, for me, it was leaving a safe corporate job, a safe corporate paycheck, right? Or at least the perception of it being safe. And jumping out on my own and literally, like day one, I'm sitting here with a laptop in my living room. I started this business in my house and I didn't really even know what to do. I'm like, hey, I need to figure out how to get clients and make money. Right. And so my situation was a little lucky because my wife at the time was finishing up nursing school. So she was like going to start her first real job. Before that, I was like the only one really making money. So it was like a good timing of like, she was coming on board to make money. And then I was just going to quit at the same time. So we were like in the almost the same financial place, and that really gave me the runway to, just jump and jump into it and see what I could make happen.
No, that's awesome. I mean, and were you starting to like transition into becoming an entrepreneur while you're an employee, or did you do what I kind of did and just kind of jump ship and,
I
burn
just
the
jumped
boats?
ship. Yeah, I just jumped ship, and for the listeners or whatnot, like, I mean, you don't have to do it that way, right? I mean, there are definitely ways, and maybe even less scary ways, to where you can be building this side gig, especially now with technology, that you don't have to like just go cold turkey, quit your job, and jump all in, right? So there's definitely ways you can do it, maybe edging in, but then at the same time, like, are you really committed, right? Are you really going to go down that path if you're got your feet at both, you know what I mean, in both worlds?
Yeah, I think that's the hard part, at least for me, was like I'm that kind of person that has to just go all in. I mean, I've done it 2 times, like at each level, and I think for the second time, I don't know if I would have done it if I wasn't in a similar state that you were in. When I had my own personal training company running, 6 figures and everything, and then opening up my gym, which is now a franchise. We franchised it, but opening the gym, I had to go from 6 figures to no figures. Right. But my wife, my wife was making money and doing everything. So it was like, okay, like we're good for a little bit while we transition. So that it was a jump all in, but a more strategic jump on the second one.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important. I think it's important to realize, like, to move to that next level, often you do got to take those couple steps back, right? Like you almost got to like break it down before you can rebuild it. And that, that's what it is. Like your income, you're going to have to take a hit in the short term, but understand that, like, hopefully the future is a whole lot better.
That's the goal, What are some of the like financial challenges you would say that a lot of entrepreneurs, and even maybe yourself when you first became an entrepreneur, face, and how do you help them overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest issue I see with entrepreneurs, especially ones that say you're under $1 million, right, and you're still a million in revenue, and you're still figuring out a lot of stuff. You don't really have a lot of systems. I mean, they're just disorganized. I mean, just flat out disorganized. And many entrepreneurs, they get into, whatever their business is because they're passionate about it, or they like doing it, or they're really good at some, specific service or thing they do. But that doesn't mean they know anything about finance or running a business or, those things. Those are totally different skill sets, right? And accounting and taxes and numbers and stuff, especially for a lot of people, can be intimidating, right? And I often see where entrepreneurs, it's like they just don't look at it because they don't, you know what I mean? They don't fully understand it, and it's just like, hey, if I'm not looking at it, I'm sure it's okay, right? And so it's really just I guess a lack of intentionality around a lot of it, and I would also say that a lot of it's the industry's fault. I mean, a typical CPA firm, tax preparation firm, they're not necessarily set up to help you with any of that stuff either, right? Like, so, and this is why we've designed our firm much different. But like the typical CPA firm is like, they're just tax preparers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like many people get a CPA, get a tax preparer, and are expecting something other than them just prepping your taxes, and they're not really motivated or incentivized to do anything else, right? They work with so many clients and they're just prepping your taxes, and where a lot of the intentionality is lost is there's nobody really planning with you and actually walking alongside, helping you make decisions, helping you make strategic decisions out there in the marketplace. It's just there's not a lot of people doing that.
No, definitely, and that's the hard part too. What I've learned is, just like in fitness, right? Because I'm in that industry, right? There's different levels to trainers, right? Like everyone's a certified trainer, whatever the case may be, but you quickly learn that certain people have above and beyond knowledge and dive deeper and continue their learnings and so forth. Yeah. And same thing for CPAs, financial planners and stuff. For example, when I first became an entrepreneur, the person I was using for my taxes, I quickly realized that this is probably not the best person because she didn't really know much about the write-offs and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, this is I outgrew that person, which is it happens.
And
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 then
that's normal, and that's going to be part of your process, especially if you're growing. You're a rapid grower. Like, yeah, I mean, you got to up your relationships too. Yep.
yeah, and then it happened again when all of a sudden I asked my CPA, a couple like tax advantage questions that I heard online, looked them up and stuff, and his response was, "Oh, I was actually looking into that too. It's really," and I was like, "Okay, if you're looking into it, like, and you're trying to do this for yourself, you don't really know about it yet." I was like, "We might be on that line,"
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then launching the franchise, all of a sudden it was like, now there's a whole different side of it that I was like, okay, I think we've kind of parted ways a little bit here.
yeah.
With yourself though, what's one of the things that when people are looking for someone like you're saying, like a financial planner or a CPA that is doing what you're saying, like going above and beyond.
Yeah,
What are
and
some of
just
the
tax strategizing. I mean, just tax planning.
yeah? What are some of the things that maybe they could ask them or kind of verify to make sure they're getting the person that they want?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's up for what you're looking for, but if you're looking for that planning and strategist, like, I mean, you should be talking to this person 3 to 4 times a year. I mean, minimum. And, like our process is, we make everybody meet with us 4 times a year. And often we're chasing down the entrepreneurs like, hey, meeting time. It's time to have a meeting. And because, they get busy and they're running around and stuff. But yeah, you need to ask questions of like, what do how do you plan with clients? How do you, do you offer any services that actually help me strategize to drive down my tax bill, not just you know file my taxes correct? And once again, that needs to be done, and most CPAs are fantastic at filing the tax returns. But what can you do? What are you going to do to help me make decisions and strategize how to make the situation better, not just report it to the government?
See, that's awesome. Those are perfect questions. So if you guys need someone, hit up Paden. So what are some of maybe the strategies that can help reduce some of that tax stress in like practical terms from like an
Yeah.
entrepreneur? Like is it like weekly checks of your KPIs, weekly, like what are your some little key tips?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, obviously, having dashboards, having KPIs, just knowing kind of what your daily measurements are, and that's not just in finance. It's across all the different pillars of business. Whether sales, marketing, or whatever. Um, you know, with this, it's a matter of like the tax planning kind of sets on top of like your accounting. And often, I get some entrepreneurs that are kind of up and coming and maybe not established as much, and they don't have very clean books or books at all, to be honest with you. And that makes my job almost impossible to do, right? Because if I don't have the information, I can't strategize around it, right? Or if I don't have accurate information. So it's, one is like you got to get clean accounting. And especially if you're doing any significant revenue, you got to get clean accounting because one, it's going to inform you to make business decisions, right? Even internally. And two, it allows a person like me to come in here and really add value and get strategic about how we recognize income and how we recognize expenses and the timings of all that. And then some even just basic strategies we can implement. Like, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the entrepreneurs listening here and whatnot have heard of like the Augusta rule or seen that, on the internet that bounces around all the time because it's talking about golf and whatever. But like that's a very simple one that 90% of, traditional CPA firms will never even help you with. Just to get a quick rundown of what like the Augusta rule is, it's, anybody in the United States can rent out their personal residence for up to 14 days a year and not have to pay income taxes on. So as business owners, the way we strategize that and take advantage of that is, you're going to host legitimate business meetings in your house, right? And we're going to pay a fair rental rate, and ultimately the business is going to pay you rent for hosting business meetings in your house, and ultimately the business gets to deduct it. You as that person, since you were in and out for less than 14 days, don't have to pay income taxes on. And while that's not some massive thing, for most people it could be $3,000 to $5,000. The reason most CPA firms aren't going to set that up for you is because they don't have any processes around it, right? They don't have any ability to help you do any of that. So they're just going to say, hey, well, it's only a couple $1,000, probably not worth doing, right, to deal with all this stuff. Well, our firm, we've set up processes and things to make that super easy for you to document and have lease agreements and really have a file in case you ever were audited to say, hey, look, this was all very legitimate of what we did, right? So, we've really built processes to help people implement those smaller things that, nobody else is going to actually help you do.
I think that's the huge part that you just mentioned too. That I think a lot of entrepreneurs, at least that I've talked to, whether through mentoring or just on the podcast and stuff, it's the lack of documentation, right? And that's like the surprising part, because the Augusta rule and all that kind of stuff only works, if you document. Because if you do get audited or anything and you don't have any proof, there's
they're going to take away that expense.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have back taxes and penalties and whatnot. Yeah, and that's what While I'm a absolute strategist and looking through the code of like, okay, what all can we do? At the same time, like we're not doing it. I mean, we check all the boxes. Like we're not going to do anything that we're going to take advantage of the law, but we're going to follow it too, right? And we're going to put together files and documents that says anybody comes asking questions, well, here you go. What questions you got? That kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people out there that'll just like, or I don't say plenty. So some people out there that will, just do the Augusta rule, have no documentation, and hope for the best, and it probably works out for a lot of them, but some people it certainly doesn't.
So I mean, like, that's my thing is what I've kind of talked to people about too. Is my understanding, or at least my feelings of taxes, right, is it's like a game, right? And what I mean by that is the more you know about the game, the better you can play the game, right? It's not that you're playing it wrong or anything like that, but if you don't know the different plays and different strategies, then
there's
how
levels.
are you exactly there's levels to it, right? And that's just what goes with anything in life, right? But the next kind of pivot I want to take on it is, how does the mindset really play into managing money and building wealth?
Yeah. So I'm very big on mindset. And of course I have my own podcast, and it's all about very similar to yours, right? About entrepreneurship and mindset and all those things. And I think what makes me different, even just as a money guy, or even as you can kind of tell, I'm probably not a typical CPA personality, but what makes me different is I really do consider myself an entrepreneur, right? As I call myself the entrepreneur's accountant, right? Because I live in that world so much. I work with so many dang entrepreneurs and in lots of mastermind groups and stuff where we're doing roundtables and picking each other's businesses apart and all that kind of stuff. So I think, like you said, there's so many different layers to this, and there's always another level of to play the game at, and it's having the mindset of growth and wanting to keep advance. It's you not only do you got to do that with yourself, but also with your vendors as you continue to grow. Like you said, you've kind of gone through different professionals. I've done that in the same, whether it's marketing or different things that where people helped me get to the level where I was at, but I wanted to keep going, and I needed to involve somebody else that has already seen those roads, right? I've already been down those roads, right? I didn't want to necessarily go with my vendor because they would be learning it with me at the same time, right? I'd rather just skip that step, go find somebody that's already been down that road, and they can take me down that, quickly, right? And they know where they're going.
No, definitely. So, I mean, with a lot of the entrepreneurs that you talk to, right, their mindset about their money, is it more on like especially if you don't know your numbers, you can't improve your numbers, right?
Yeah.
So their mindset isn't really developed around whether it's an emotional development or just a analytical development around their actual finances. How do you start to prepare them to understand sometimes spending money, right, like in like a SEP IRA or something, like that expenditure is actually a benefit and it's not losing money? Or how do you start to kind of help them develop their mindset?
Yeah, and it's one, it's developing a relationship, right? I'm a very relational guy, and everything I do is trust and money and the all those types of things, and I'm very aware, like I've I understand it's not just a logical game, right? I especially around money. Everybody has so much emotions around money, and you're carrying whatever your parents did with money and all those habits and whatnot, right? So it's I understand it's not just like a lack of information, right? It's not generally not the problem. You're in fitness space, right? It's not like people don't know generally what to do, right? They know they need to work out more and eat less calories generally, right? If that's how they want to, and in taxes, and once again, like there's so many more levels to that, but like the base level is, people kind of understand that. So it's more of a habit thing, right? Right. And helping people understand and make better choices and seeing the long-term gain, right? Because everything's can I have it now, or if I delay gratification, it could be better, years down the road. And that's always the trade-off. And especially in money, it's the more you can delay gratification or keep doubling down and rolling the money forward and whatnot, you get the most growth. So it's trying to always get entrepreneurs to see the bigger picture. And now at the same time, it's like I have a lot of conversations with entrepreneurs. It's like, so what problem are we solving for? Like, what is the end game here? Right? Like, everybody wants to pay less taxes and make more money. Sure. But like, to what end? Like, what are we actually, what is your business? What do you like? What's your vision? What are you actually trying to build? Because, make more money and pay less taxes. I mean, there's a million different things we can do, but like, depending on what you're building, that's going to inform, the strategies and roads we ultimately take.
No, definitely. I mean, with that though, man, I lost that. I had something that when
Yeah,
you're saying that, it clicked in my head. I was like, man, actually, I was just thinking about that the other day.
yeah. I do that all the time. Where I lose my train of thought.
It'll come back to me. But I mean, is there? Oh, actually, a little side question,
Yeah.
and this is more for kind of like a personal question too, because you have financial planning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I've met, fractional CFOs and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's the difference for entrepreneurs between someone that is actually like a financial planner that will help you plan your finances, and whether it's with the business and your personal, and what's the difference between like a fractional CFO?
Yeah, a fractional CFO is going to be, they're going to be running your internal finance function, right? You usually see fractional CFOs maybe get involved in businesses, I don't know, maybe 3 million up generally. Maybe not even till 5 or 7 or something. It just kind of depends on the business, but they're in there running the finance function, and where you've got enough stuff going on that it's worth having a high level person in there just making financial decisions all the time, and monitoring and budgeting and being strategic there. Um, I don't know very many fractional CFOs that work in tax at all, right? Like, as in that is not. I mean, I'm sure there are some, but the vast majority aren't, right? They're just there as like almost an outsourced employee to run your finance functions. Um, Generally, even then, I work with a lot of organizations that have a fractional CFO, and we're coming in and doing their strategy around taxes and ultimately the net worth building of the owner, right? So that, I think that's kind of the biggest difference. The CFOs are really, they're internally working on strategizing of like business growth and things like that, right? And somebody like me is coming in and I'm very specific in the tax world, and while we do provide a lot of business consulting too, honestly, with just the vast amount of businesses we've worked with over the years, we can usually add value in a lot of those places too. But we're very focused on how do we grow the business owner's net worth as efficiently as possible, and accomplish what goals obviously they want.
No, definitely. I think the reason I asked that too is you get hit up, and I'm sure you do as well, on social media from like LinkedIn and Instagram
Constantly.
and stuff. Yeah. And it's like, and I think not like understanding like your tie between, CPA and financial planning makes complete sense. And then that separation between CFO makes complete sense. But I've seen just financial planners without like a CPA or a CFO connection, and they kind of blend into like a CFO, but they're not a CFO, and it's like this weird little mixture of wanting to touch every world, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, the vast majority of financial planners are like asset managers, is what I would say. Is they help you invest your money in whether stocks and bonds or whatever that is. I'm I'm why I do financial planning and not talked about bad about a bunch of financial planners, but like very very little of them have extensive tax experience at all. Which in my view, I mean, the tax is such a huge part of all that. Like, you can't really do financial planning without understanding tax, because taxes, I mean, the biggest expense in all that, and what you constantly have to keep in mind as you're making moves and investing in different things is like, what are the tax implications of this, and how can if I go into this investment, how can I get out, and how I'm going to deal with the taxes, and all those things, and you know there are a lot of just kind of retail financial planners that you come in and they just stick money in mutual funds, and the advice is not very high level, in my opinion.
No, okay, that makes more sense. I do have a question on a strategy or a potential strategy that
Yeah.
I've kind of heard about, and then it's funny enough that I saw it yesterday.
Yeah.
It was about capital gains, right?
Yeah.
And capital gains and a trust. I forget what kind of trust. I know there's different kinds of trust, but it was saying essentially that if you put your assets into, and I don't know what they qualify
Maybe a
as assets
beat
in
it
this,
trust, I'm guessing, maybe.
but and then if you sell the assets while it's in the trust, you defer capital
Yeah,
gains.
deferred sales trust. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's a real thing.
It is, but you do have to be careful about what is done and who's doing it, and with any of these things, with any tax strategies and whatnot. Like, there's a lot of great people out there, and then there's a lot of people that are trying to sell you something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yes, so deferred sales trusts are absolutely a thing. That's usually only coming into play at pretty high levels. You know what I mean? Those things are, when you start talking about maybe high seven, definitely an eight plus figure transactions and stuff. Generally, things under that, you're not doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, deferred sales trust. There's ability to sell assets into a trust, and you can loan money against it, and it allows you to kind of basically defer capital gains. Is what it can do.
Oh, got you. So I mean, and then the reason I wanted to bring that up is I also heard that you can, and again, this is all, I don't have no knowledge of these things, but someone was telling me that they had used that and put their business into the trust, or sold the business into the trust or something, because doing it that way versus creating the business, you can't, or I guess the trust couldn't create the business. You got to basically sell it to the trust or give it to the trust, and it deferred taxes or something. Is that
Yeah, and that's kind of the overarching deferred sales trust kind of model.
Okay.
You ultimately end up kind of selling the business into the trust, and it gets complicated and specific. But yeah, it can allow definitely for you to defer capital gains. Absolutely, yeah. And
Okay.
and that's one way. There's millions. I mean, I say millions. There's definitely others too. One I would tell you about that's is going to be really big starting back up in 2027 is what's called opportunity zones. Opportunity zones are out of the one big beautiful bill here. We got opportunity zones returns. So opportunity zones are like areas governments draw and say, okay, these are economically depressed areas, and there's tax benefits for investing in these areas, right? So what happens is people develop funds. They're building real estate or whatever. Of course, with any of these things, you need to worry about the underlying investment and how confident you are in that. But the tax structure is what it is. Opportunity zone funds allow you to take a capital gain. I don't know, let's say you sold an asset and have $1 million capital gain. You can take that $1 million and dump it into an opportunity zone fund. Say this happens in 2027. Your tax bill on that $1 million gets delayed all the way to 2030. I think it's 2034. So it's like 7 years. So you, instead of paying that capital gain tax now, it gets delayed 7 full years. And then these funds are designed at year 7 that they will kick you out of distribution, a tax-free distribution at that point to pay your tax bill that's due in year 7, right? And then if you hold on to the underlying investment for 10 years or more, there's no taxes at all on any of that growth. So you
Wow.
think about it is you drop $1 million in, you know you're going to get your cash in year 7 out of it to pay that tax bill, and then you can ultimately exit the investment tax free at the complete end.
Wow.
And so that's like how opportunity zones work. Of course, you really got to vet like what the actual investment is and that kind of thing. But it's a very powerful opportunity.
No, that's huge. That's awesome. I mean, what blind spots do you think that most entrepreneurs have with their finances?
I think they just don't know what's possible, and part of that is just you don't know what you don't know, and that goes for all of us. We all don't know, we don't know, right? And it's always just evaluating your relationships, right? Even your vendors, your relationships, your employee, and obviously all your relationships, but evaluating the relationships is this person going with me to the next level, right? And are they capable of going with me to the next level? And even better so, have they already been there? Right? Like have
Yeah.
they already been down there, and even in their own personal life, right? So it's I, the blind spot is you just don't know what you don't know, and often their strategy. I mean, almost certainly their strategy that can be implemented and value that can be added, just depending on your situation, but. I think it's just getting around people that can help you do that.
Got you. One last random tangent question, and this was that random thought that I had. It just came back to me. Going back into like the trust thing, the I think it's Rothschild like method, right? Where it's like everything's in the trust and they're putting like the assets into the trust, and then you're taking draws from the trust or something like that. Is that something that people actually do, or?
Yeah, well, you talk. I think it was probably not Rothschild. It was probably Rockefeller. The
Oh
Rockefellers
yeah, yeah,
were yeah, the big trust stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's the things with trust, and I'm definitely not an attorney.
yeah.
The thing with trust are they allow you to really control ultimately what the assets do even after your death, right? Like you can describe what all this money's for and who can take it and for what reasons and yeah, Rockefeller was very key on legacy and not just passing on assets, but passing on the principles and things that allowed them to earn all those assets, right? And so they developed a trust systems to where, hey, there's rules around how all this money works because you look at a different family, you look at the Vanderbilt family, 2 or 3 generations after them, they were all broke.
Wow.
And they were like Rockefellers and Vanderbilts were way up there together. And then if you don't pass on money generally doesn't go through generations very well, right? Often it goes to like one generation and then it's gone. So it's the awesome thing about trust is it can allow you to not just get money to the next generation, but hopefully even through the next generation, right?
Got you. So this might not be a CPA question or even a financial planning question. It may be, but it might be more into your entrepreneur side and knowing numbers, right? What are the top KPIs that someone or an entrepreneur should be tracking to focus on their growth?
Yeah. One, just margins. I mean, often people have no idea, especially if you're in like a product based business or even really services, depending on your business model. But like, most people don't know their. I mean, most people don't have clear line of sight to really. I mean, like, nothing shocks me anymore to see multi-million-dollar businesses that don't have clear line of sight to really anything. They got an internal person doing their accounting that like kind of knows what they're doing, and so it's a pure lack of sight, and a lot of it is margins. If you're a product based business or construction or remodel or whatever, like job costing, knowing like did I actually make money on this job I just did or not, or I'm like pretending like I did, right? And then also just flat out net net profit margin, right? Like you need to know, like, especially like here in the construction world or whatever, like what is your profit margin? What should your profit margin be on every job? And then that allows you to back into figuring out, okay, how do we hit, a 20% net or whatever that is, right? So um, it's all margins. Of course, you got to worry about overhead and just random expenses and stuff, but it's really just making sure you're hitting the margins you need to hit to make whatever money you need to make. And the issue is that, like, no one even does that math or even thinks about it, or very, very few people do.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big one. I mean, even for me, like I do my numbers every Friday so that I could just see and keep track and plan out the next week. And that was something
Yeah,
that
well, and I would say the other part that just come to mind as well is just like cash flow. Obviously, you can have a very profitable business, a very profitable growing business, and still run into serious cash problems. Especially if you're like a product based business and you always got to reinvest in inventory and you're a growing company, and at some point that kind of like breaks and you run out of money, even though you've been making money the whole time. So cash flow is everything, right? Like you've got, you can't like pay your bills with your inventory or feed yourself with your inventory, right? You got to manage cash flow and have a line of sight, and especially if you're like, fronting job cost and things like that.
no, I think that's one of the big things. Like the reason why like we started tracking every Friday, and how I found out I kind of outgrew, my current my previous CPA was getting P&Ls like a month and a half after like it was already done. I was like, okay, I'm being reactive to everything. I'm like, awesome. But also making decisions. And I was buying inventory for the gym, like supplements and stuff, and buying, at bulk to get the 10% discount. And then it was like, okay, well, we're sitting on so many supplements that we're buying more than we need, and we're just doing it for the 10% discount. Like, this is killing the margins, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the big things, like actually knowing the numbers and being able to make decisions on a weekly basis or monthly basis, but knowing your numbers even kind of at almost or somewhat live, allows at least me to make better decisions.
Yeah, and I think just having like a basic like cash flow projections, especially even just with you say you're buying all this inventory, right? Like knowing that, like, okay, here's the timing of the next few months of like my bills coming in and probably the income we're going to recognize. It's like, do we hit any point in there where like, oh, the money's gone, right? And of course the further you can see that out, the more you can do about it, right? And it's just making sure that you're not running out of cash.
Exactly. So I got one final question that I ask everyone, right? And it doesn't have to be a financial answer, right? But the one thing I'll say is it's not a tombstone. I say that, and people still sometimes give me a tombstone answer, right? This is the Paden Squires legacy wall. On this legacy wall is any message that you have learned from your life's journey, right? Professionally or personally. What is the one message you would leave for the up and coming generations?
Wow. Gotta sum up my life in one sentence, huh? I if I had to put it on there, is that with enough time and energy put into something, you can get better at it. And I think Tom Ballou is a podcaster I listen to a lot too. He does Impact Theory, founder of Quest Nutrition and whatnot. And he calls it the only belief that matters, right? If you have the belief that if I put time and energy into something, I will improve at it. That's the only belief that matters, because if you don't have that belief, you will never start and you never will get good at it, right? So it's having the belief that you can really do anything. And I truly believe this, with enough time and energy.
100%. I believe that too. I love it. Well, where can people connect with you and follow you and learn more about tax planning and financial planning?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, on the tax planning side, it's squirestaxplanning.com. So, there you can book a call with us. Love to chat with you guys about your situation and see if we could be any help for you. On the personal side, I have Paden Squires out there. You can find me on YouTube and all the social media places. On that side, of course, I got my podcast, Behind Their Success, where we interview a lot of awesome entrepreneurs and get their stories. share a lot of mindset and tips and stuff like that. So on the personal side, just look me up. I'm all over the place. My name, and then if you're interested in tax stuff, squirestaxplanning.com. Book a call with me.
Awesome. All that will be in the show notes, guys. But make sure you guys share this episode with a friend. If you know an entrepreneur that struggles with their taxes, definitely share this with them. But leave that 5-star review. It really does help us out and spread the word for the entrepreneurs and just for mindset, right? But Paden, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your day to hop on the Mindset Cafe.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Just in the game of life, mindset.